Human shields alien girl on the battlefield ruins, but human finds enemy bows to her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Heat shimmered above the broken metal plates scattered across the ruins, the air thick with the lingering smell of burnt circuitry. Evan Cole pushed himself up from behind a collapsed support beam, dust rolling off his jacket as he checked the cracked display on his wrist console. Battery at 12%. The system flickered, trying to stabilize, the faint hum of damaged servos echoing inside the shattered silence around him. He drew a slow breath, tasting the dryness of the air. Somewhere behind the distant ridge, an engine whined before fading again. The battlefield had been abandoned hours earlier, but the heat still clung to the ground, radiating through the torn fragments of armor and bent struts lying half-buried in gravel. Evan wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his glove and forced his legs to move, listening to the crunch of debris under his boots. He wasn't supposed to be here alone, but the chaos had scattered his unit, and now he was little more than a stranded engineer picking through what was left. His visor flickered again before dying completely, leaving him with only the sun's harsh glare and the metallic tang drifting through the ruins. He knelt beside a twisted support column, adjusting the straps on his pack, when a faint sound cut through the stillness, a soft, trembling gasp. Evan froze. He held his breath, listening. Another sound followed, barely above a whisper. A breath. A small, uneven exhale. He moved slowly, brushing aside a panel of scorched plating. Beneath it, a flash of pale silver caught the light. A hand, slender, dust-covered, trembling. Evan's heartbeat tightened. He crouched, easing the metal aside with careful pressure until the gap widened enough to reveal her face. An alien girl, maybe 15 or 16 by human standards, her skin a soft shade of purple, brushed with silver undertones. Her eyes, half open, reflected the sunlight like polished glass. She blinked weakly at him, clearly disoriented. No weapon in reach. No armor intact. Just fear and exhaustion, her breathing shallow. Evan raised his hands to show he meant no harm. Easy. I've got you, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the tightness in his chest. He braced his feet, lifting the fractured panel with controlled force. The metal groaned, but shifted enough for him to reach in and help her out. She weighed far less than he expected, her body tense at first, then slowly relaxing as she realized he wasn't a threat. A distant thud rolled across the ruins, a harmless aftershock of settling debris, but she stiffened in alarm. Evan stepped instinctively between her and the open field, shielding her with his body. You're all right. It's just noise, he murmured. But her gaze stayed fixed on him, confusion softening into something almost like disbelief. She whispered a single word in a language he didn't understand, the tone fragile and unsure. Evan offered a faint smile. Let's get you somewhere safer. And as the hot wind slid across the ruins again, carrying dust and the faint hum of distant engines, he realized her presence changed everything about this broken battlefield, and about what he thought this day was going to be. The heat continued to rise from the fractured ground as Evan guided the alien girl to a shaded corner formed by a partially collapsed wall. The sunlight filtered through gaps in the concrete, casting stripes of pale gold across the dust on her skin. She leaned against a piece of broken support metal, catching her breath. Evan kept a careful distance, watching her try to steady herself. Her violet eyes lifted to his, still hesitant. She touched her chest lightly. Asha, she whispered, offering her name with a small nod. Evan repeated it softly. Asha, I am Evan. She blinked at the sound of his name, almost studying it, then him, as if trying to understand why a stranger would stop for her in a place everyone else had run from. The wind picked up again, carrying a faint hum of distant engines. Asha tensed at the sound, her fingers tightening around the edge of the metal plate beside her. Evan noticed the subtle movement and crouched, lowering his voice. We should move. 2. Open out here. He checked his wrist console out of habit, though the screen stayed dark. I know a spot just ahead. There used to be a storage bay. The roof is half gone, but the walls are solid. Asha did not answer, but when Evan offered his arm for support, she placed her hand lightly against his sleeve, not quite holding on, but close enough to keep steady. They moved slowly through the ruins, stepping over shattered frames and cooled circuit housings. Every step stirred faint echoes that seemed louder than they should have been. Asha's breathing had grown more shallow, the long walk clearly draining what little strength she had left. Evan noticed and paused beside a large fragment of plating that once belonged to a heavy transport vehicle. "We can rest for a moment," he said gently. She shook her head, a small, determined gesture, and pointed toward the direction he had mentioned. Her voice came out soft, melodic even in exhaustion. "Safe. Go." They reached the remains of the storage bay, marked by a pair of bent beams leaning into each other like tired shoulders. The floor inside was littered with dust and thin sheets of metal, but the space offered enough shade and shelter from the desert-like heat radiating off the ground. Evan helped Asha sit on a smooth piece of collapsed flooring. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the cooler air settle around her. "Thank you," she murmured, barely above a whisper. Evan sat a short distance away, resting his arms on his knees. "Anyone else with you?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No. I was leaving when the noise came. Lights. Ground shaking. I hid." Her English was accented but clear enough. Evan listened without pressing further. She glanced at him again, her expression puzzled. "Why did you help me?" Evan shrugged, brushing dust from his hands. "It looked like you needed it." Asha seemed to study him again, her silver-tinted skin catching the faint gleam of sunlight that filtered through the broken ceiling. Something softened in her posture, a kind of fragile understanding forming. A gentle rumble rolled through the ground, distant but unmistakable. Asha's head lifted. Her eyes focused sharply toward the horizon, her breath catching. Evan followed her gaze, seeing nothing but waves of heat rising above the broken terrain. But Asha's reaction left a knot in his stomach. She whispered something in her language, the tone filled with recognition rather than fear. Evan leaned in slightly. "Asha, what is it?" Her eyes did not leave the horizon. "They are coming." She paused, then added in a steady, quiet voice. "Not for you. For me." The distant rumble grew clearer, a low vibration that traveled through the broken floor and settled in Evan's chest like a second heartbeat. Asha's fingers curled slightly against the metal beneath her, her eyes narrowing as she listened. The light drifting through the fractured ceiling shifted across her silver-tinted skin, revealing how tense her posture had become. Evan scanned the ruined horizon again, seeing only heat waves and drifting dust. "Is it your people?" he asked carefully. Asha's breath steadied, but she did not look at him. "Not exactly. They follow orders from those above. They search for me." Her voice held a layered meaning he could not unpack. Evan shifted his weight, brushing debris aside with his boot. "If they are here for you, then we should not be out in the open when they arrive." She gave a faint nod, but there was no fear in her expression. Instead, there was something heavier, like she was bracing herself for a truth she had hoped to avoid. A sudden gust swept through the storage bay, stirring a faint shimmer of dust into the air. Asha's hand rose slightly as if to steady herself against the wind, but her gaze stayed fixed outward. Evan moved closer, crouching beside her with slow, clear movements. "You are hurt. You should not face anyone right now. Let me get you farther inside." For a moment, she did not respond. Then she met his eyes with quiet resolve. "Evan, if they see us together, they may misunderstand. They protect me, but they do not know you." He nodded once, accepting the warning without flinching. "Then I will keep my distance when they land. But I will not leave you alone." Asha exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering a fraction. She glanced toward the cracked doorway that led deeper into the structure. "There is a place where the walls are stronger. It will give us more cover." Evan supported her as she rose. Her steps were slow, and each movement made the faint silver strands in her hair catch the dim light. They moved through the narrow passage formed by overlapping debris, the air cooler here, the shadows thicker. Evan guided her to a corner where an old cargo container lay tilted against a support beam, creating a small pocket of sheltered space. Asha settled there, leaning back with care. The rumble outside grew louder for a moment before settling into a rhythmic pulse. She tilted her head, listening intently. 3 ships, she murmured. Lightweight frames. They are scouts. Evan rested one hand against the container wall, steadying himself as he absorbed her words. Are you in danger from them? She looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes steady. No, they would never harm me. But they will question you. Evan gave a faint smile. I am used to questions. Asha's gaze softened, a fleeting trace of gratitude passing over her expression. You do not understand, she said quietly. My people do not question with curiosity. They question with purpose. They expect obedience. They do not expect someone like you. Evan considered that. Then we will let them find you first. I will stay behind you. No sudden movements. No confusion. Asha studied him again, her eyes tracing the dust on his jacket, the worn edges of his gear, the calm steadiness in his face. You shielded me earlier, she whispered, as if the memory still amazed her. You did not know who I was. Evan shrugged lightly. You needed help. Her expression softened in a way he had not yet seen, a fragile warmth breaking through her guarded exterior. She lowered her gaze slightly. The scouts will be here soon. The rumble shifted, turning into a gentle hum as the ground vibrated underfoot. Asha's eyes lifted toward the direction of the sound, and her voice dropped to a hush. Evan, when they see me, everything will change. The steady hum outside grew clearer until it pressed gently against the walls of the collapsed storage bay. Dust fell in tiny drifts from the overhead beams as the sound lowered in pitch, settling into a soft vibration that spread through the metal floor beneath Evan's boots. Asha shifted, steadying herself with one hand while her eyes reflected the faint shimmer of light creeping in through the broken ceiling. They are close, she said quietly. Evan nodded, keeping his voice calm. Stay behind cover. If they see me first, it may complicate things. Asha hesitated, her gaze flicking briefly across his face. You do not need to protect me now. They will listen to me. She paused, then added with an unusual softness. But I do not want them to misunderstand you. Evan offered a small, reassuring smile. I will be fine. The hum softened again, followed by a gentle rush of air as something passed overhead. A thin streak of reflected sunlight flashed across the wall, flickering like a signal. Asha tilted her head slightly. They have landed just beyond the ridge. Evan helped her rise, guiding her toward the opening of the storage bay where fragmented beams formed a narrow frame. She stepped carefully, the silver undertones of her skin catching the glow from the shifting dust-rich air. They stopped just shy of full sunlight. Asha steadied herself, taking in a slow breath before stepping past him. Evan stood close enough to reach her, but far enough not to intrude. She looked over her shoulder once, meeting his eyes with a quiet certainty. Stay here. I will speak to them first. Evan nodded. I will be right behind you. Asha stepped out into the open, the warm light settling across her features. The ruins stretched before her in long waves of broken metal and fractured stone, and beyond them, at the edge of the ridge, 3 slender shapes approached. They walked with synchronized precision, their movements fluid and controlled. Even from a distance, their presence carried an unmistakable sense of purpose. Asha's fingers twitched at her side, a subtle sign of nerves. Evan watched from the shadows, ready to move if necessary, though he knew he could do little more than try to keep the moment calm. As the figures came closer, the afternoon light revealed soft metallic patterns running across their uniforms, designs that pulsed faintly with shifting colors. Their eyes glowed with a gentle sheen, reflecting both the light and Asha herself. They stopped several feet away from her, standing in a straight line, silent but attentive. Asha lifted her chin slightly, the gesture poised and steady. She spoke in her own language, her voice clear and melodic, carrying across the ruins with natural authority. The 3 figures exchanged glances before responding in the same tongue, their tones respectful and measured. Evan could not understand the words, but the rhythm told him enough. This was not hostility. It was acknowledgement. Asha listened, nodding once. Then the tallest of the 3 stepped forward and glanced subtly toward the shadows where Evan stood. Asha followed that look, her expression tightening. She raised her hand gently, a gesture both protective and commanding. The scout paused immediately, lowering their gaze in a sign Evan recognized as deference. Asha spoke again, her tone firmer now. Whatever she said caused all 3 scouts to straighten with sudden focus. Then, as if sharing a silent agreement, They turned toward Evan fully. For a moment, the entire battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Asha took one step closer to him, her voice quiet but steady. "They wish to see you," she said. "But do not be afraid. I will stand with you." Evan exhaled once, adjusting his stance. "Then let us go together." Asha offered the faintest nod as the warm light shimmered across her silver-tinted skin. "Together," she agreed, and the two stepped forward into the open sunlight. The sunlight stretched long across the fractured ground as Evan and Asha walked side by side, their shadows merging over the uneven metal fragments beneath their feet. The three scouts waited with silent discipline, their faces calm, their posture straight. As Evan approached, they shifted slightly, not out of alarm, but as if preparing for something ceremonial. Asha slowed, her steps lighter, more deliberate. A subtle glow along the patterns on the scouts' uniforms brightened at the sight of her, a reaction that made Evan glance between them with growing curiosity. Asha spoke first in her own language, her voice soft yet steady, carrying a natural weight. The scouts bowed their heads briefly, a synchronized motion that seemed instinctive rather than rehearsed. The tallest among them stepped forward and addressed Asha again, their tone respectful. Asha listened, nodding at intervals, her expression calm but guarded. When the scout finished speaking, she turned to Evan, her violet eyes thoughtful. "They ask how we met," she said. Evan raised his eyebrows slightly. "What did you tell them?" Asha held his gaze for a moment before responding. "The truth. That you found me under wreckage, that you helped me stand, and that you kept danger away even when you did not know who I was." Evan let out a quiet breath. The scouts exchanged glances after hearing her translation, their expressions shifting from formality to something more contemplative. One of them stepped closer, stopping, a respectful distance in front of Evan. Their gaze studied him with calm intensity, almost analytical. A faint hum pulsed along the metallic patterns of their uniform as they offered a small gesture with their hand, palm open. Asha leaned slightly toward Evan. "This is a greeting," she explained. "It is a sign of respect." Evan mirrored the gesture carefully. The scout responded with a slight incline of their head, acknowledging the exchange. A breeze moved across the ruins, lifting small grains of dust and tracing delicate lines through the air. Asha looked toward the horizon for a brief second, then back to Evan. "They are surprised you stayed with me," she said softly. "They expected you to leave when you realized I was not human." Evan shrugged lightly. "You needed help. That was enough." Asha seemed to absorb that, her posture softening. The smallest scout stepped forward this time and spoke to her in a gentle tone. Asha listened, then offered a reply that carried a warmth Evan had not yet heard from her. When she finished, she turned toward him again. "They want to guide us to a safer location," she explained. "Somewhere more secure than these ruins." Evan nodded. "That is probably a good idea." But Asha's expression grew more serious. "They will allow you to come because I ask it. But once we arrive, others may question your presence." Evan met her eyes steadily. "If you vouch for me, I will follow your lead." Something in her softened again, a subtle glow of trust in the way her shoulders eased and her breathing steadied. The scouts stepped backward in perfect unison, turning slightly to indicate the direction they intended to take. Before following, Asha touched Evan's sleeve lightly, a quiet gesture of grounding herself. "Stay close," she said. "They are not unkind. They are simply cautious." Evan nodded. "I can handle cautious." Asha allowed a small, fleeting smile before guiding him forward. As they walked, the light shimmered across her silver-tinted skin, making her presence stand out against the muted colors of the broken battlefield. The scouts moved ahead with fluid precision, their steps silent despite the debris. For the first time since the devastation had scattered his unit, Evan felt a sense of direction returning. And as Asha walked beside him, her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You changed the path of this day, Evan. More than you know." The ruins behind them fell quieter as the four figures moved toward the waiting horizon. The scouts led the way with measured, silent steps, their metallic patterns shifting softly in response to the sunlight as they moved across the broken terrain. Asha walked beside Evan, close enough that her shoulder occasionally brushed his arm, though each time she steadied herself with a quiet, composed breath. The heat rising from the ground had softened, giving the air a cooler edge as long shadows stretched across the path. Evan watched the scouts for a moment before speaking quietly. They seem to respect you a lot. Asha's gaze stayed forward, but her expression changed, the faintest hint of hesitation appearing. It is complicated, she said. They serve something larger than one person. They are loyal to their structure. Their duty. Evan nodded slowly. And where do you fit in that structure? Asha did not answer immediately. The scouts ahead slowed slightly to adjust their formation, allowing Asha and Evan to catch up without breaking their rhythm. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft enough that only he could hear. Higher than they believe I should be. Lower than I wish to be. The statement lingered between them, a quiet confession wrapped in the hum of the wind. They continued moving until the ground dipped into a shallow basin, where the ruins thinned and the earth opened into a narrow passage framed by large stone outcroppings. The air here felt cooler, more stable. The tallest scout raised a hand, signaling a temporary stop. Asha turned to Evan, her silver-tinted skin reflecting faint ripples of light from the textured uniforms. They are scanning the area, she explained. They want to be certain this place is safe for us to enter. Evan rested his hands lightly on his belt, taking in the quiet around them. It is very organized, he said. Asha gave a small, almost amused nod. Always. While the scouts worked, Asha shifted her weight, her posture more relaxed than before. She looked at Evan with a thoughtful expression. You did not ask why I was alone, she said. Evan shrugged gently. It did not feel like my place. She considered that answer, her eyes softening. Most humans would want to know. Curiosity is common among your kind. Evan smiled faintly. I am curious. But I did not want to make you relive something painful. Asha's lips parted slightly, a small breath escaping as if his restraint surprised her. She looked down at her hands, tracing the faint shimmer along her fingers. Thank you, she whispered. The scouts finished their scan and gestured for them to continue. They walked deeper into the basin, where the stone walls rose higher and the sunlight narrowed into gentle streams. Evan noticed Asha's steps slowing, not from exhaustion, but from thought. After several moments, she finally spoke. I was leaving my people because I wanted to choose something for myself, she said quietly. Just once. A choice not made by rank or expectation. Evan listened without interrupting. Asha continued, her voice carrying a fragile truth. I knew they would come for me. I just did not know how quickly. Evan looked at her with a steady, reassuring expression. Everyone deserves a choice, he said. No matter where they come from. Her eyes lifted to his, the violet reflecting soft traces of gold from the filtered sunlight. Among my people, choices are rarely that simple, she murmured. The scouts halted again, signaling that they had reached their temporary destination. Asha exhaled lightly, then turned to Evan with a quiet honesty that had not existed earlier. You are different from what I was taught humans were, she said. Evan raised an eyebrow. Is that good or bad? Asha's lips curved into the faintest smile. Unexpected. She stepped slightly closer, her voice dropping to a gentle whisper. And sometimes, unexpected is exactly what changes everything. The scouts called to her softly in their language, and she straightened, preparing to move forward. But before she stepped away, she looked at Evan one more time, her expression filled with a growing trust. Stay with me, she said. There is more I must tell you. The scouts guided them to a sheltered alcove carved into the stone, where the air felt cooler and the soft echo of distant wind filled the narrow space. The light filtering down from above moved in gentle patterns across the ground, catching faint reflections in Asha's silver-tinted skin. She stepped into the shade and took a slow breath, as if gathering the courage to say what she had carried in silence. Evan stayed beside her, close enough to offer support, but careful not to crowd her. She glanced at the scouts, who stood a respectful distance away, forming a quiet perimeter. When she finally turned back to Evan, her expression held a gravity he had not seen before. There is something you must understand, she said softly. My people did not send scouts only because I was missing. They sent them because of who I am. Evan nodded gently. I figured you were important. Asha lowered her gaze, her fingers brushing lightly against the stone wall beside her. Important is one word, she murmured. But the truth is heavier than that. Evan waited, letting her find the words in her own time. After a moment, she lifted her chin, her violet eyes reflecting the thin beams of sunlight. I am the firstborn of the Varelian line, she said quietly. The heir. Evan absorbed that without flinching. Asha, he said, voice steady. That does not change who you are with me. She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and relief, her breathing easing just slightly. It changes everything elsewhere, she whispered. My presence determines alliances. My decisions guide entire sectors. Every step I take is watched. Her voice softened further. That is why I left. For one moment, I wanted to be Asha. Not the heir, not a symbol, just myself. Evan nodded, the understanding settling warmly between them. You deserve that, he said. Everyone deserves a place where they can make their own choices. Asha closed her eyes briefly, the sunlight highlighting the delicate shimmer of her features. I found a moment of freedom, she said. And then everything collapsed around me. She opened her eyes again, meeting Evan's gaze. I did not expect someone to reach for me from the rubble. I did not expect kindness without condition. Evan smiled faintly. Maybe you needed someone who was not part of your world. Asha's lips curved slightly, a quiet acknowledgement. Perhaps, she said. Or perhaps I needed someone who chooses with his heart, not with duty. The scouts shifted subtly, their attention turned to the ridge as a faint change in the air pressure rippled through the basin. A soft hum followed, different from the earlier vibrations, deeper and more resonant. Asha stiffened, her posture tightening with recognition. More are coming, she said. Evan looked toward the ridge, though he could see nothing yet. Friend or foe? She inhaled slowly, her voice calm but edged with significance. Not scouts. Not soldiers. This is a vessel of rank. Evan studied her expression. Your family. Asha did not look away from the ridge. Yes. She hesitated before adding. And they will not expect to find me with you. The hum grew louder, rolling across the stone walls like a distant wave. Asha's hand brushed against Evan's sleeve, not in fear, but to anchor herself. Her voice dropped to a whisper meant only for him. Stay close, she said. Whatever happens next. I do not want to face it alone. Evan nodded, steady and calm. I am right here. The glow on the horizon brightened, signaling the approach of something far larger than scouts. Asha exhaled, gathering her strength as the shifting light played across her silver-touched skin. This is the moment, she whispered. The one I have been running from. And together, they turned toward the rising light. The glow on the horizon expanded into a broad shimmer that bent the light around it, casting soft ripples across the stone walls. The scouts straightened immediately, their metallic patterns shifting into a more formal configuration as they aligned themselves with deliberate precision. Asha drew a slow breath, her posture lifting with a dignity that had been absent while she traveled with Evan. He noticed the subtle change, not in who she was, but in the weight she now carried. The shimmering grew brighter until a sleek vessel emerged through the haze, its silver hull reflecting the sun in long arcs of pale light. The craft moved with graceful steadiness, descending into the basin with barely a disturbance of dust. When it settled, the gentle hum faded into silence, and a soft hiss signaled the opening of its side ramp. Asha's fingers brushed lightly along Evan's sleeve, a small grounding touch before she stepped forward. He remained close, matching her pace but allowing her the space she needed. The ramp lowered fully, revealing a figure standing at the top. Their silhouette was tall and regal, draped in robes that flowed like liquid metal, shifting subtly with each breath. Their skin bore the same violet-silver sheen as Asha's, but deeper, richer, like starlight reflected in still water. When they stepped down, the scouts bowed immediately, their heads lowered in perfect unison. Asha paused, inhaling slowly before taking another step. The figure approached, movements smooth and assured, their eyes focused entirely on her. When they spoke, their voice held a quiet power. Asha. The name carried both relief and reprimand, a blend only family could shape. Asha bowed her head, not deeply, but with clear respect. Mother, she replied softly. Evan's breath caught for a moment. The heir's mother. A leader of the Varelian line. The woman's gaze shifted briefly, noticing Evan. Her expression remained composed, but something flickered in her eyes, a subtle calculation. You are far from where you belong, her mother said gently, returning her attention to Asha. Asha did not retreat. I needed space to choose for myself, she said. Just once. Her mother studied her, the sternness in her features tempered by an undercurrent of understanding. Your choices guide more than your own life. Asha nodded. I know. Her mother's gaze moved again toward Evan, examining him with quiet intensity. And this human? Evan straightened instinctively, unsure what was appropriate, but unwilling to shrink from the moment. Asha stepped slightly closer to him, the motion subtle but unmistakably protective. He helped me when I had no strength left. He shielded me even when he did not know my name. The scouts exchanged faint glances, their posture softening in response to Asha's words. Her mother regarded Evan with more depth now, her eyes reflecting a quiet measure of surprise. A human did this. Evan spoke carefully, keeping his tone respectful. Anyone would have done the same. Asha looked at him with soft disbelief. No, she said quietly. Not anyone. Her mother absorbed this, her expression shifting from cool assessment to something contemplative. You placed yourself in danger for her, she said to Evan. Yes, he replied simply. A long silence followed, filled only by the soft rustling of dust settling around the basin. Then, Asha's mother did something neither he nor the scouts expected. She inclined her head slightly toward him, a gesture rare among her people. You have shown honor, she said. And for that, you have my gratitude. Asha's breath caught, her eyes widening just enough for Evan to see. Her mother continued, her voice steady. Walk with us. There is more to discuss. Asha turned to Evan, her violet eyes warm with quiet relief. You see, she whispered, everything is changing. And with the basin glowing in the vessel's reflected light, they stepped forward together. The vessel's interior glowed with soft, cool light that reflected along the smooth metallic walls, casting a gentle sheen across the corridor. Evan stepped inside behind Asha, feeling the temperature dip to a comfortable calm that contrasted sharply with the heat outside. The air held a faint, clean scent, like polished crystal. The scouts followed at a respectful distance, while Asha's mother walked ahead with effortless grace, her robes catching the shifting lights with every movement. Asha walked close to Evan, her shoulders brushing his in the narrow space. Her earlier tension had eased, replaced by a thoughtful quiet. She glanced up at him as they walked, her voice low enough that only he could hear. I did not think I would ever bring someone from outside my world into this space. Evan offered a small smile. Glad I did not make the wrong impression. Her eyes softened. You did not. They entered a wide chamber shaped like a half-circle, its walls alive with slow waves of shimmering patterns. Asha's mother turned to face them, and the scouts formed a silent arc along the edges of the room. Evan stood beside Asha, the weight of the moment settling between them. Her mother studied both of them for a long, measured breath. Asha, she said gently, you left because the pressure on you was great. I see that now, and I see that you found someone who offered you support when you least expected it. Asha lowered her gaze, her voice soft. I needed to breathe, to choose my own steps. Even for a moment. Her mother nodded. And that moment led you here. She turned to Evan, her expression thoughtful. Human, you have given my daughter something rare. Not rescue, not assistance, but dignity. Evan felt the words settle deeply, unsure how to respond. She deserved that, he said simply. Asha's mother approached slowly, stopping only a few feet away. Her eyes reflected both curiosity and something warmer. You placed yourself between her and danger, she said, even knowing nothing of her status. Asha looked at him with quiet gratitude, the silver undertone in her skin glowing softly. Her mother continued, her voice steady. Among my people, such an act is not taken lightly. It is a sign of devotion, even if unspoken. Evan's breath caught slightly, the truth of her words settling between them. Asha took a small step closer to him, her presence steady and warm. The chamber lights reacted to her movement, brightening subtly as if in recognition. Her mother's gaze softened as she looked at her daughter. If you choose to walk a path different from what is expected, I will not stand in your way, she said quietly. But you must choose with clarity. Asha inhaled slowly, turning toward Evan. Her violet eyes reflected the chamber's shimmering glow, deep and luminous. She reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against his hand. It was a simple touch, but in the quiet expanse of the room, it carried the weight of a decision. I choose to stand where kindness is given freely, she said softly. Where I am seen as more than a title. Evan felt something warm rise in his chest, a steady certainty. Asha's mother observed them, a faint smile touching the corner of her lips. "Then it seems your path begins here," she said. She stepped back, allowing the space between Evan and Asha to become their own. Asha's hand lingered in his, her grip gentle but sure. The silence that followed was not empty, but full, filled with unspoken promises, with gratitude, with understanding. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, casting a soft glow across their joined hands. Asha lifted her gaze to him, her voice a quiet whisper. "You changed my world, Evan." And in the stillness of the vessel, her mother watching with calm acceptance, the scouts standing in respectful silence, and the chamber shimmering around them, the moment held. No more words were needed. The universe seemed to pause, honoring the quiet truth between them.